Hello everyone, welcome to WP Quickies. You can see Daniel there. There's another 8 people on the chat just now. So I'll just give everyone a few minutes to get on board and we'll start at 1 p.m. Mr. Meowpuss, yeah, thanks for suggesting this one. I think web hosting is always a good topic. We always get asked about it at the meetups. You're mentioning that at the last meetup, WP Bakery. Yeah, well, it used to be a visual composer, and it was released a long time ago. So I think it's got a bit of a catch up. They've tried to rebrand it as WP Bakery, but it's still got the core old code there. So unless they really do some revising, then I don't think it really lives up to what Elementor and Beaver Builder can produce. Almost there, almost 1 o'clock. We've got 11 people on board this afternoon, which is good. Davina, welcome on board. I'm using Visual Pacific for a few years, but want something that gives more RAM. Okay. And cheap. Okay, well, this is definitely going to be a good talk for you. We're going to cover cheap and fast and stuff in this session. Let me just get my cup of tea sorted, then we'll start. I have my large cup of tea with my nice real Earl Grey tea leaves in there, just to give it some flavor. Okay. Hey Steph, how you doing? Thanks for making it along. Okay, I'll jump back onto comments towards the end and try and answer some of those questions, but let's dive into it. Okay, hi and welcome to the WP Quickies, bite-sized WordPress tips and tricks in 30 minutes or less, or at least I'll try. So today we're going to be looking at the best web hosting for WordPress, or are we? So what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to name a whole bunch of actual web posts and tell you what I think of them, if they're good or bad. I mean, that's not going to help you realistically, because those are my opinions for my business and my situations. So what I am going to do is I'm going to share different ways that you can evaluate how to figure out the best web hosting solution for your WordPress website. But before we start, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and the little bell as well. And I'll just notify you each time we go on live with a new video. So go and subscribe to the channel. That would be great. Okay, so here's what we're going to learn today. So we're going to cover what does best really mean, the different types of web hosting, and some of the key features that you can focus on to really get a good idea of whether that's the best hosting plan for you. And we will cover some of the commonly used web hosting providers in the WordPress space as well, just to give you an idea of where to go and what to look at, what to research. So what does best mean for you? The word best is very relative. So what's best for me is not necessarily what's going to be best for you or going to be best for your customers or your clients. So what we really need to do is we need to have a look at the different requirements that each web host is going to provide. So looking at things like cost, speed, support, uptime, security, things like that. So let's go through and have a little look at some of those different parts of what web host providers offer. So let's start with the actual different types of hosting, because there's quite a few out there. So we're going to look at shared, dedicated, and cloud hosting. And I'm also going to put up this this triangle, the good, fast, cheap triangle. I hope everyone's heard of that. The whole idea between this triangle is that you can have two parts of that triangle, but you can't have all three. So you can see here, if you choose good and cheap, then that's going to mean it's going to be slow and good. So if we choose fast and cheap, then that's going to give us low quality. And if we go for fast and good, then it's going to be expensive and good. So please bear in mind that quality triangle when you're evaluating what type of web hosting account that you want to go for. So shared hosting. Shared hosting is pretty much everything from the ultra cheap $3-4 a month hosting all the way up to your expensive VPS or virtual private server machines with multi-core CPUs and RAM and thousands of dollars per month. So all shared hosting, there are virtual boxes that sit on top of the physical servers. So at the cheap end of the shared hosting, you get a small virtual space, a small box that's allocated to you for your website, your web server to run inside. And on the cheap side, you can think about this little machine, this virtual machine that this company has created, the hosting company has created, and they've given it just a little bit of resources. Okay, so it's running with a little bit of RAM, a little bit of CPU. And what they try to do is they try and squeeze hundreds of websites to run in this little space. And what that really means is that if you're getting one of those types of plans, then your website is trying to get the resources and competing with all those other websites that are running within that box on that server. So if it only takes a few websites to run things like emails or phishing scams, things like that, it's really going to cause a load on that server. And that's going to cause a problem for your website. It's going to cause a problem for all the websites running there. So it gets really crowded. You're not going to get great support from that either, from the web host, because it's the cheapest option. It's just create a box, shove a website in there, and pretty much forget about it. And so that's at the very cheap end of the shared hosting. At the other end of the hosting, the more expensive end is VPS. And VPS is a virtual private server. Now, it's still a box. It's still a virtual server that's run on top of the physical servers. But with the VPS, it allows you to add stuff to the box. So you can pay to add more RAM, more CPUs, and more disk space, which you can't do in the really low-cost ones. You just basically get their servers and that's it. So with VPS, think of it like an in-app purchase. If you've got any mobile games that use that sort of thing. So you've got a box and you can pay more money and you can expand it and get it bigger for you want. And of course, making it bigger, getting more stuff means it's going to be generally more expensive. So whereas the shared hosting, the low end, is cheap, it can be somewhat slow and unreliable. The VPS, generally, they are fast and reliable, but they can be expensive to run, especially if you've got a complicated website, an e-commerce website, for example. You're going to have to throw more RAM and throw more CPU at it. It can also be expensive in terms of management as well. So not only are you managing your WordPress website on the VPS, you've now got a whole machine, a whole server, an operating system with all its services to manage as well. And that can be really expensive in time and technical expertise as well. Now, of course, you can ask the hosting company to manage that server for you, the VPS server, but again, that's going to add to cost. So VPS, reliable, really fast, but it's getting towards the more expensive end of the hosting. So that's roughly shared hosting. We've had a look at the low entry cost and the high entry cost for VPS. The next type of hosting is dedicated. So dedicated hosting is where you actually buy a physical machine. So you're buying one of those racks that they put in a data center. Now, you're going to get 100% of the machine resources, which is great. So it's going to make your website super fast. And and generally, it's going to be pretty reliable as well, because it's in a data center, it's in a rack, it's pretty good. But my goodness, it's going to be super expensive. This is probably one of the most expensive types of hosting that you can get. And it has a downside. If you need to upgrade that machine, because it's not a virtual machine, you have to actually add hardware to it. So add new RAM, add new CPUs, add more disk space, and that means downtime for your website. And it's going to mean it's going to be expensive because you're going to have to get an engineer to go there, get all the parts and put it back together. So while dedicated hosting will give you a really cheap, really fast experience, it's going to be really expensive. So usually dedicated servers are only really considered by kind of big companies, enterprise companies, where they've probably got part of their own data center and people to manage that. The last type of hosting I want to cover is cloud hosting. Now, again, cloud hosting is a type of virtual space, but it's slightly different than the shared version. So rather than your website being hosted on a server, it's basically run as an application in the cloud. And what we mean by cloud is it's made up of, yes, physical servers, hundreds and thousands of physical servers, but they're all meshed together to create one huge big server framework infrastructure. And the whole idea of the cloud system is that if one server dies or isn't available to be used, then the others can spin up and take its place. So theoretically, if you've got your website on a cloud system, then it's going to stay up for forever. Theoretically, it should never go down. And the good thing about cloud hosting as well is that it expands and contracts to meet demand. So if you've got your website on a cloud server, and just say one of your posts go viral or your website gets picked up by the mainstream media, and you suddenly go from a couple of thousand hits a day to 1 million within like a space of an hour, then theoretically cloud systems, cloud hosting can meet that demand. They can expand with demand and they can contract back down when that demand goes away. Now, cloud hosting, that's really reliable. As I said, it should be super fast because this stuff is really new. It's running on all the latest tech. As for cost, well, it's kind of a pay-as-you-go method. So the more resources it uses, the more you're going to pay. So if your website does go viral and you have to spin up more servers and use more resources, then yep, it's going to drain your bank balance more and more the more resources that you use. So just be aware of that. If you're trying to look for a cloud hosting solution, you might want to try and put some caps on how much it can expand and how quickly it can take money out of your bank account. So that's the three general types of hosting I want to cover today. But within that whole context, there's also another type of hosting, specifically for WordPress. We're talking about WordPress managed hosting here. Now you need to be a bit careful when you have a look at the WordPress managed hosting, because I've seen it offered from all different types of web hosting companies. So some web hosts that do different types of hosting, like host static websites, Joomla, everything else, sometimes they offer a managed WordPress hosting solution as well. But you really need to dig in and ask them what makes their WordPress managed system different than the other types of hosting that they provide. Because I have a suspicion that sometimes when somebody says it's WordPress managed, all it really is, it's on a separate box. So you don't get all the bells and whistles. At the other end of WordPress managed solutions, you get companies, and we'll look at some of those later on, that are completely dedicated just to hosting WordPress websites. So if you've got a static website, they're not interested. If you want to spin up a Joomla or a Drupal, no, they're not interested. They're focused on WordPress. And those are the ones that I think are the most reliable if you're looking for a WordPress managed host, because they have tailored their entire infrastructure just to make WordPress run faster. So we're talking about servers, we're talking about memory, we're talking about security. They know all the issues that come around with WordPress. Caching as well. They know how best to cache WordPress, the database, and the queries it makes, and also security as well. And with the experts, that they basically should know WordPress inside and out. So if you've got a WordPress problem and go to those types of companies, they should be able to quickly find out what's happening, because they basically live and breathe WordPress all the time. So don't expect a WordPress managed hosting solution to be the same across all these systems. Do your research, ask the questions about how they actually set up for WordPress differently than they do for any other systems. So that's the different types of hostings. Let's move on. Just having a quick look here at comments. Hi, Ricky. Hi, Elizabeth. Hi, Chandra. And hi, Joey as well. Thanks for joining today. So when you're looking for your ideal hosting solution, you need to do research. And I'm going to have a look at some of the key features that I think you should be looking at when you're trying to investigate hosting options. So let's start with uptime. So uptime is the amount of time that your website is up for and available for Joe Public to access and peruse. But a caveat here, you need to monitor the uptime for your own website, because the hosting companies sure aren't going to tell you how long your website went down for. So there are two good uptime monitoring services, and I'm going to post them in the comments here. So one is called Status Cake, and that's the one I mostly use, and the other one's called Uptime Robot. They've got paid and they've got free limits, but essentially you can get them to monitor your website, ping it every 5 minutes, and it'll tell you when it goes down. It'll send you a little report, a little email, or a text message. So when you're looking at uptime for web hosts, what you want to have a look is their SLA, their service level agreement, and just have a look at how much percentage they guarantee your website is going to be up for. So this is a contractual agreement. So it's not the amount of uptime that they guarantee your website will always be up for. Of course, things go wrong, servers go down. It's a contractual agreement. And what that means is if your website goes down for more than what they agree in the contract, then it's a compensation scheme. So they will pay you back for the amount of time that your website is down outside of their uptime agreement. And the money you're going to get back is going to be the money that you pay for the hosting. It's not going to be money that you lost with the downtime. It's going to be money that's paid back from the contract that you paying them to host the website. So just bear that in mind. So let's have a look at some of the typical uptime agreements. So 99.9% uptime. That's probably the minimum that you want to go with. Anything under that is going to be pretty pants. So what does 99.9% uptime actually mean? So a company is saying they're going to guarantee 99.9%. Are almost 9 hours a year. Now that downtime can happen all in a winter, or it can happen spread over the entire year. But if they guarantee a 99.9% uptime, then that means that if your website goes down for 9 hours, that's okay for them. Contractually, that's okay. Let's have a look at adding an extra 0.09% into the uptime. So if a company offers 99.99% uptime, have a look at those stats and see how they've changed. So from a daily basis, it's down from 1 minute down to just almost 9 seconds. And look at what that means for a year. So 52 minutes. So we've went from eight almost 9 hours allowed downtime to just under an hour's downtime, just because this company has guaranteed a 99.99% uptime. And so that's why I think it's really important when you're looking for web hostings, have a look at what percentage that they guarantee for uptime, because that is a huge difference. And it depends also on your website as well. So if you're just have a general blog and maybe you update it once or twice a week, you might not be bothered if it goes down for 9-10 hours a day, whereas if you've got an e-commerce site or a membership site, if it goes down for 9 hours, then you're probably going to lose some big bucks. You're probably going to get people unsubscribe to your site. So that could be a huge deal breaker for you. So this is why I wanted to mention this one first, uptime. I think it's really, really important, and a lot of people don't pay a good attention to those 999% there. And thanks, Ricky. I know you're listening just now, watching, so I totally stole your stats from your WordCamp presentation. So thanks, buddy. Okay, next one is security. Now, if you asked me about 5 years ago if you should have SSL or certificate on your website, I would have said, sure, if you're running an e-commerce website, if you're selling stuff, then otherwise don't bother. But now is different. Having your entire site running on HTTPS is now the new normal. So a lot of new normals happening, but this is definitely one of them. It's been proven to be a major factor in the Google ranking algorithm. So, everyone needs to be on SSL now. Also, you should never, ever have to pay for an SSL certificate, because there's a company called Let's Encrypt, which can give you one for free. And most web hosts are now using this Let's Encrypt system. So if your potential web hosting company, when you're talking to them, is saying that, if you want to go secure, then you're going to have to pay, $50, $100 a year just so we can provide an SSL certificate, then no, that is not good enough. Go somewhere else. Okay, backups. I found this picture of a cassette. Does anyone even remember those things? Unfortunately, I do, so I show my age there. But backups, super important. Backups are going to be dependent on what type of site you run, but in general, what I would say to you is don't rely on a web host to take backup snapshots of your site. They probably do, but they'll probably take a snapshot of your account as well, like your hosting account with your emails and your domains and stuff. They probably take it at that level, or they could take a mirror of the machine, anything like that. So it might not just be your actual website that they back up, and they could be backing up daily. It could be weekly or monthly, depending on what plan they have. So, and also they're likely going to charge you money to restore that system as well. So you can ask about backups and what they do, but in general, I would say don't rely on your web host to take backups. I would have a backup plugin system in place so you can granularly control exactly what it is that you want to back up, how often as well, and so you can restore it quickly. I just posted in the chat. I've written an article last year about the different backup plugins for WordPress. So once this is finished, go and have a look at that if you're interested in the different types of backups, and I'll show you all the different things. Now, of course, it's going to be dependent on your type of site and the content, the frequency that you update it, how busy it is. For blog sites, you might get away with daily or even weekly backups. But for busy e-commerce sites, I would recommend having at least a daily backup as a minimum, but real time, if you can afford it. Support. So what support do you need for your website? Are you a technical person who can fix WordPress coding and plugin issues fast, or are you a non-techie who needs to pick up a phone and talk to a real person at the other end? So hosting accounts in Australia, well, they're very expensive compared with other countries, even taking into consideration exchange rates. So a lot of people do look outside of Australia towards the US and Europe for hosting because it's a lot cheaper. But what I would say is if you need support during your core business hours here in Australia or where you live, please make sure that the web hosting company you're looking to go with provides that support within your core hours. Okay, there's nothing worse than trying to pick up a phone and call somebody and you get that recorded message saying that their support opens, at 3 a.m. your time. Also, you definitely need to check what type of support they offer. I've seen some web hosts, I've used some web hosts from clients and only offer like a chatbot support on their website. And even worse, I've actually tried to engage with a hosting company on a client's behalf. They would only take support requests through a Facebook Messenger. Okay, that's just crazy. I know, completely appalling, but there you go. So definitely ask them what support methods that they offer. But I think personally being able to talk directly on a phone to a techie is probably the best type of support that you can get. So talking to a WordPress techie is even better, But definitely if you can go through to a technical guy rather than just one of these like pre-sales front desk type people, then that would be the best type of support I think you could probably be looking for. So we're getting towards there, getting towards the end. So geolocation, or in other words, where your web server resides. Now the web keeps growing faster and faster. So latency, or the time it takes for data to get from the web server to your client browser, is decreasing all the time. And throw into that mix content delivery networks, CDNs, like Cloudflare, and they keep a cache of your website's popular pages on local country servers, so you can get them to your clients for a faster response. Given all that into the mix, I don't think having your website hosted on the other side of the planet is too much of an issue nowadays. But support aside, we're just talking about speed here. It's more going to be dependent on the infrastructure that hosting company uses. So you should totally ask them how their servers and network are set up. Are they white labeling or reselling their services from another company? That's a bit of a red flag for me. Or do they use Amazon, Microsoft Azure, or Google Cloud? Or do they have their own data centers? And that's like a big tick. So definitely ask them about latency, times from their country to yours, and ask them what type of server and network they're using to run their hosting on. Quickly, staging and cloning. I just had to get this picture of Stormtroopers, Lego Star Wars in, because I think it's awesome. So this is maybe a little bit of a more advanced feature that might not be applicable to everyone. But WordPress today, it can be a really complex beast with huge plugins, do different things. Then you've got different versions of PHP, all that stuff into a big melting pot. It means that things can and usually do go wrong. And that's why testing updates is absolutely critical. And this is where staging sites come in. So if you have a complex e-commerce site, being able to clone your site off to a test server is very advantageous. So you can do all your updates there, and you can see where things go wrong, and you can create a plan for when you do the updates on the live system. Now, some hosting companies, they actually provide a cloning from your live to staging, and also from staging back to production. And that can be good for some websites, but it can be bad as well if you've got a really busy site. If you take a long time to update, if you clone it back, you might overwrite some data there. So that particular feature might not be for everyone, putting it back from staging to live, but definitely being able to clone your website onto a staging server to do the upgrade path and test, I think that's a fantastic feature. So it's definitely worthwhile having a look and to see if your web hosting provider provides that. So we're almost done. And that's the last piece, the last feature that I want to talk about for doing your research into web hosting. So now I'm going to talk about some of the commonly used web hosts that I've been with, I've heard clients use. And I'm just going to share, so this is not my opinions on whether they're good or bad, it's just my opinions of where I think they kind of sit in the cost, feature, location type thing. So here we go. Crazy Domains, they primarily offer shared hosting towards the low end of the cost, and they're based in Australia, so good for support. GoDaddy, I think everyone's heard about GoDaddy. They're pretty much similar, shared systems, low cost, end of the market, and they're based in the US. Then we've got SiteGround, so they offer shared hosting plus WordPress managed plus cloud. So their costs are a bit mixed, and they're also based in the US. Venture IP, well, they're here based in Australia, so they offer a shared hosting, and they're towards the kind of the low cost market. And then there's Zuver. So Zuver is actually kind of a branded version of Venture IP, but focused on WordPress managed hosting only. And again, they come in a little bit of the low cost side, and again, also in Australia. Crucial Computing, they're also based in Australia. They offer shared hosting, WordPress managed hosting, and VPS. So again, their costs are a bit mixed depending on which kind of level you want to go with. And WP Hosting, they're also based in Australia. They are a WordPress managed hosting, and they also offer VPS systems as well. So again, their costs are a bit mixed. DigitalOcean, they offer VPS and cloud hosting. So their costs, again, are mixed, and they're based in the USA. So they can be low cost and they can be extremely high cost depending on how much stuff you add to your systems. DigitalOcean, I think, is kind of more based for developers or techies, kind of know how to manage websites and operating systems. Then we've got WP Engine. They are a WordPress managed company, so they only deal with WordPress. Their price point is mid to high, depending on which packages you go, and they're based in the USA. But they do have people here in Australia, and they do allow you to choose Aussie data centers, and that's where your server, your data would reside. Flywheel, again, very, very similar to WP Engine. In fact, they've been bought by WP Engine last year, but they're still running as a separate brand for now. Same type of format, WordPress managed only company, mid to high costs, based in the US, but they allow you to have an Australian data center for where your web server resides. Another one is Pagely. They offer WordPress managed websites and other things. They are very, very high cost. They're towards the enterprise level of companies. They're based in the USA, and they run their systems on the Google Cloud platform. Another one is Kinsta, and they offer WordPress managed hosting only, so they're a WordPress company. Again, they are mid to high costs, based in the US, and again, they run their systems on the Google Cloud system. And then there's Amazon, specifically Amazon Lightsail, allows you to deploy WordPress websites on there. That's a cloud-based hosting. And again, those costs are going to be based on the resources that you use. So if you use more resources, it's going to cost more. They're based in the US, of course, it's Amazon, and they're probably more for the more technical minded web admins, system admins. And then there's Google Cloud, which of course is cloud hosting. And it's very similar to Amazon in that they're resource-based costs. So the more stuff you use, the more it's going to cost you. And again, if you're hosting directly on Google Cloud, it's going to be based in the US. And again, I think it's probably more for like a technical audience for those. So there's what we've ran through today. I think we've kind of done it on time. It's 12:30 already. If you've got any suggestions as well for other topics, please fill out the Google form below. I'll leave it on the screen for a couple of minutes. There's a QR code there that goes to the form. This one today, the hosting was suggested by Mr. Meowpuss, who's watching just now. So thanks for that. It's a really, really good topic. I hope that I've done it justice for you. Try to cover as much stuff within 30 minutes as I could possibly do. So what I'll do is I'll have a look at some of the questions, and let's see what we can do. Here's one here. And if using Google Cloud hosting, location of the server is still important. Is it still important? I don't think so, because Google Cloud is so super fast and they've got their own DNS, then the latency, the time it takes for the data from the web server to come to your client is like really, really low. They've got super fantastic networks. So no, from a speed point of view, I don't think location of server is going to be important. In fact, it might not even be in the same location, because it's running on the cloud. It might switch between where it thinks is the best speed. The only issue I'd say with that is if you're got like European clients, also GDR, is it GDPR? So where your data is kept, it might be a legal issue, but in terms of speed, no, I think Google Cloud's pretty good for that. Let's see, Janie Barron, FastComNet for pretty good support. That's great, good to hear. It's always great to get feedback. You should definitely be asking other people how you think or who they use to host, and get some feedback from them. There's nothing better than word of mouth. Steph likes cPanel. Yep, cPanel is a popular hosting framework, allows you to get access to the server using a GUI. Let's see. Clario. Oh, so Clario's responding to Anne's Google Cloud hosting. Yep, I agree with that. Paul, thanks for commenting. SiteGround have just opened an Australian-based hosting server. Fantastic. I didn't know that. Thanks for letting me know about that, Paul. So that's great. So that means that SiteGround is a good option if you're one of those people who need to pick up a phone within business hours, within Australian business hours. That's great. That's a gem, Paul. Thanks so much for that. Daniel, Bluehost. I heard that they were good until they were bought out, and then the pay the next referral bonuses, which is why so many people usually recommend them. Okay, yeah. I guess a bit of political. Website hosts come and go. Bluehost was on the WordPress.org website as a recommended host for many, many years. I believe that got taken down last year or a couple of years ago. So I'm not quite sure what that means from a political automatic standpoint. But yeah, Bluehost has been around for a long, long time. Yeah, but you know, as I say, web hosts come and go. They get bought out by big companies and merged. So yeah, that's true as well for WP Engine and Flywheel. You know, WP Engine have bought Flywheel, and at the moment, you know, they're going to run Flywheel as a separate brand because it kind of targets a separate audience. They're kind of maybe more developer focused, but you know, we'll see what happens. You know, down the line, will they merge infrastructure? Will they, you know, merge hosting plans? Who knows? Steph says, Ventra don't see as integrated as some other WordPress managed hosts. Ventra IP, Steph, they offer just normal web hosting, so like plain static or Joomla or anything, and then they've got that WordPress managed kind of in the mix. So again, that's in that scenario where I said that not all WordPress managed hosts are equal. So if you want to go with a really good WordPress managed solution, I would probably go with a company that only does WordPress managed and doesn't do a kind of a mix for that. Saying that, they have the Zuver, which is their WordPress branded managed hosting version. So it's Ventra IP, but it's a brand of Ventra IP. I think they run it on the same system as Ventra IP, so I'm not too sure how different that is going to be to the Ventra IP main offering. So definitely that'd be a question to ask the Zuver guys if you get in contact with them. Scrolling through, please guys, if you need to go, then yeah, just jump off. I'm going to wrap this up soon. I'm just going to go and try and go through as many comments as I can before we go off. Steph, SiteGround should replace cPanel with their own dashboard. Okay, eek. Yeah. When I hear people are customizing dashboards, that kind of gives me shivers up my back. I like to be able to know where to go and where to click on. So if they're doing custom, then yeah, I need to go and check that out. Clio, thank you for the feedback. Glad you're getting some entertainment out of these, maybe some useful information as well. Again, Steph is saying he gets 200 millisecond pings from a server in the US on the Google Cloud, but it pings 20 milliseconds in Australia. Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Daniel again, I find the majority of my traffic comes from the US, so photography, portfolio. So yeah, so he doesn't mind if it's hosted in the US, yeah. Yes, definitely be looking at your Google Analytics, guys, and see where your main traffic's coming from. Because, you know, if you can do anything to reduce latency, then that's always a good thing. And so if your primary audience is in the US, then yeah, it kind of does make sense to have a US-based server. But you can also use CDNs, content delivery networks like Cloudflare, which will cache a copy and serve that to in different countries. And that can really increase the time, or decrease the time, I should say. Let's see. Okay, I think that's it, guys. Thank you so much. Where's my details? There we go. That's me. Please hit me up on LinkedIn, on Instagram, more probably infrequently, and on Twitter sometimes as well. But guys, if you've got any questions about this, then yeah, just please just let me know. Send me a tweet or connect me on LinkedIn and have a chat, and I'm happy to discuss this a little bit more. If that's all, then I'm going to thank you guys so much for being with me to the end of this lunchtime WP Quickie. And I've queued up one for next week. I can't quite remember what it is. I think it's custom post types. So if you're interested in that, then yeah, please join me next week. Oh, sorry, someone's asking, could you answer Jonathan's question? You missed it. I'm interested. Okay. Elisa, let me scroll up Jonathan's question. This one, yeah. How important for a host to offer cPanel access? One of my hosts offers their own interface, which makes us pay for features that come free with cPanel. Okay, right. Yeah, that'd be a bit of a red flag for me. I can understand what's happening here. So you've got a host, web host, that's got their own interface, their own way of adding stuff, like file manager and DNS access, things like that. And I think what Jonathan is saying is some of the things that you get for free on cPanel, this company here is saying, oh, well, if you want access to change your domains, or if you want access to, change zoning or something, you have to pay extra for this module and you add it onto the dashboard. I mean, again, that's a model. It's a fair model that they go with, but yeah, that's a bit of a red flag to me. I would think because other hosts give something like cPanel or Pless for free, I would kind of think that those sort of things would be standard. So John, I think it would be depending on what they're trying to sell you as a paid add-on, as to versus what you think you can get with cPanel. If it's going to be like a standard thing, like DNS zoning or security or file manager, then yeah, that'd be a bit of a red flag to me. I'd be probably thinking about switching over for that. Switching host. So thanks for that question, and thanks Lisa for pointing that out. Ricky, you were there. Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to steal your stats. I know I didn't ask formally, but I give you some kudos there. Yeah, Ricky's a WP Engine person there. So if you want to talk about WordPress managed stuff, then yeah, hit Ricky up as well. He's a fountain of knowledge, more than me on this subject. Okay, guys, thank you so much. I'm going to tune out now. Please join us next week again. It is on custom post types. Yeah, great. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next week. Ciao, everyone.